This is Blu Laker. This is Radio Tribune, right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Lost Wages, Nevada, it's sometimes referred to. And again, my name is Blu Laker, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of Nevada. And there's a lot of things that we don't understand about Nevada, particularly the history and how the important part that it played in the Civil War, number one, the development of San Francisco, and other events that just really made Nevada unique. One of the things that I want to talk about today is one of the interesting stories about Nevada history is just like every other state or country, there's always some very interesting information about how they were formed, who formed them, why they formed them, when they formed when they did that. And so one of the interesting stories that I have run across was what they called the greatest sham ever perpetuated, at least during that time. Now I'm hoping that I can find it, because I'm going to have to read it, because I need to be, I need to be on the money. I don't want to say something that is not true. I'm trying to find it here. Let's see. Let's see here. Well, I should have had this all prepared, but you know what? I ran late today. I was coming in from Henderson, and I ran into, well, first of all, I just about ran out of gas, so I had to turn around and go back to the gas station by the time I got that taken care of. And then I caught traffic lights. We're getting to the point today where it is necessary to spend 5 minutes at a traffic light. By the time they rotate around, if you happen to catch the tail end of a light, in other words, just before you catch the amber, you got to catch the red light to stop. And so then you got to wait for all 4 directions to take place. And it turns out that it's about 5 minutes at a lot of the lights. Stop and think about that. If you have 2 or 3 lights to go through that are 5-minute lights, that's 15 minutes that you're going to add to your traffic. If you're only going 3 or 4 miles, that's really bad. We need a little bit faster transportation. The only way that you're going to get around that is to get on the freeways. But even on the freeways, it can be difficult. However, it only takes me 20 minutes to get in town from Henderson, and that's from one end to the other on the freeway. And it takes me 15 minutes at 3 different lights. That's 35 minutes. 35 minutes. 20 miles. Well, I don't know what that is, and looks like I'm having a little trouble finding that information that I was going to tell you about. I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then tomorrow, when I have the correct information, we can discuss it a little bit further. But the greatest sham in Nevada happened in the 1800s. And it's interesting how the story developed. Well, back in the 1800s, a lot of mining was going on, and there were 2 or 3 really important things that happened during that period of time. The mining, okay, obviously people earning a living and having place to live, prostitution, and a lot of drinking, and a lot of gambling. There was a lot of gambling that took place, especially here in Nevada. Now, whether it was legal or not at the time, well, that's another story. But they had it. And some of the games that they played were Faro, F-A-R-O. That was a pretty simple game, but with a lot of money being bet on it. And there were avid gamblers. So then there was craps, and although I don't remember seeing too much about blackjack, I'm pretty sure it was in play at the time. And so, we had this, and the life was different, back then, because they didn't have television, they didn't have radios, there just was not very much communication. Oh, yes, they did have the telegraph, and the telegraph was important, very important, during the Civil War. And the period somewhere between 1860 and 1864, 67, I'm not sure the dates right now. That's when the Civil War took place here in America. What's interesting about that is that the West played a very important part in what took place during the Civil War. One of the reasons for that was we were a mining community. And you probably don't know this, but the majority of the people at that time, about 90% of the population, were illiterate, couldn't read or write. Yeah, that's a lot. But as I mentioned, during the Civil War, you have to finance the war. You have to pay for it. You have to pay for the soldiers, the ammunition, the guns, and just the whole gamut of war. You have to provide medical facilities, hospitals, nurses, blah. Just the whole thing requires money. And both sides, the Union and the Confederacy, needed money. Well, when gold was discovered in California and in Nevada, of course, it brought a lot of people into the area. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story because I'm going to be giving you some questions, and I would like to have you call in to see if you have the right answers, because if you have the right answers, you'll win a prize. But, back at that time, we didn't have the population that we have today. We're not even talking about Nevada so much as everything else, every place else, whether it's California, Arizona, New Mexico, all of the states, the population were much lower then than we currently have today. Well, the problem with that is that we have not really kept pace with the transportation system to adequately handle traffic flow. What I see as a major problem, it's already here. But as we go further down the road in the next 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, we're going to see what we have today, unless things change. I don't think you can even imagine how bad the traffic will be. Are you going to be stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic with lines 20, 30 miles long? Hey, we have that today. You can have an accident someplace between here and California, and it can be over a mountain pass, or it could be anywhere in between, Barstow, so forth, and the traffic gets backed up. A big rig flips over, takes up the road, people get hurt, they have to bring in the emergency services, of course, they have to bring in the police, and it all takes time to straighten out. That's what we have today. Now, imagine a situation where the traffic is 3 or 4 times more than it is today. Oh, well, how can that be? Well, I don't know. I don't know how it can be, but I've been almost a lifetime resident here in Nevada, Las Vegas. And I've seen, I believe when I got here, the population of Las Vegas might have been around 20,000. 20,000. Today we owe, according to recent information, 2.8 million people in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, if we haven't gone through a dramatic change in that period of time, 50 years, I don't know what to tell you. Yes, we have undergone major changes. We now have issues that we never, ever had before. Of course, back then we only had horse and buggy, then we had the electric vehicle. And the electric vehicle at one time actually outnumbered gasoline-powered vehicles, only for a short time. The reason is it wasn't that the electric vehicle didn't work. It's that the cost of gasoline was so inexpensive compared to the trouble you had to go through with an electric. What was the trouble? Well, the trouble was batteries and being able to go longer distances. And the internal combustion engine kind of relieved that pressure. And of course, we've grown from, the horse and buggy all the way up to luxurious vehicles and limousines and, all kinds of ground transportation that we never ever even could have imagined 100 years ago. Never imagined that. Everybody was used to the horse and buggy, even going back into Roman times, that's really about all they had. They didn't have anything that was mechanically functional. And today we do. The problem with that technology is that as technology has advanced, so has the population. And it's very hard to imagine over the next 20 years or 50 years, if we could look that far down the road, what are we going to do about transportation and fuel in order to keep our horse and buggy running? Well, it might be horse and buggy if we run out of fuel. Okay, so we're not going to run out of fuel. Not in the next 100 years or so. Should we look further down the road? Of course, we have to. Have we things today that are capable of removing the fossil fuel from the systems? Yes. Yes. And does history repeat itself? Yes. And what's wrong with the electric vehicle? You better think about that twice, because you see everything in your vehicle, the interior lights, for example, the exterior lights, the air conditioner turns on with electricity, the controls, all the instrument panel, radio, all of those things operate off of electricity. So what isn't electric on the vehicle? Well, the chassis, the doors, but the door windows, the automatic windows or the electric windows, they're still electric. So when you stop to think about it, the only thing that is not electric is the internal combustion engine, and that's only the interior parts, because we still have alternators, we still have thermostats, and we have temperature gauges and just various other electrical equipment that you must utilize, or you need to utilize, in running your vehicle, your transportation. Of course, if you ride the bicycle, you don't need that. So we do have a few options, but not really good options for long distance traveling without augmenting either natural fuels and going to something like nuclear powered vehicle. Well, we're saying, hey, that choked today. We're not going to go nuclear powered. Well, how do we know? We don't know. But we do know that we currently have available options that can relieve our pressure on our fossil fuels. Because we generate electricity with the sun every single day. As a matter of fact, the sun produces more energy in 1 hour than the total worldwide necessities. 1 hour. for all of the world. So why aren't we taking advantage of that? Well, the reason is that we haven't taken the time to develop it in such a way that we have the long distance required. Can we go 10 or 20 miles? Yes, easily. Up and back, 40, 50 miles, 100 miles, even 200 miles with the proper battery elements. So, but generally speaking, especially with lead acid batteries, you have a limited distance that you can travel with an electric vehicle. And yes, I know about the hybrids using gasoline and electricity, or natural gas and electricity, or I can't think of it, but petroleum products like diesel and propane. That's what I was trying to think of, propane, that you can utilize in conjunction with the electricity. So in the past and in current use today are some of the more efficient hybrids that are going to produce anywhere from 50 to 60 miles per gallon on the fuel, that your choice of fuels, that you can have available to increase the mileage that you can get out of a vehicle. Is it the complete answer? Well, the answer to that, in my opinion, is this, that because we have limited, finite fossil fuels, that the price of those as they dwindle will become increasingly more. When you look at the production of electricity, though, and the sun, then you begin to realize that we really have more power than we need, and all we need to do is to figure out a way to distribute it in the proper way that doesn't impose penalties. For example, again, a penalty, if you were, is that if you were using an electric car and you were going from here to, say, Newport Beach, you would have to stop someplace in order to recharge the battery system. Some battery systems recharge quicker than others. But if you are forced to spend 5 to 8 hours and you need to take a motel, then you have to add that into the price of the fuel, because right now you can take a gasoline or diesel-powered vehicle and travel that distance without any problem. And even if you need fuel, you can still stop along the way to get it. Electricity is slightly different. But what if we had an electrified highway, which basically means that you would have power on demand, and that power on demand would not only recharge your vehicle, but will provide the propulsion energy that's required to take you to your location. And when you get off, depending on how long, you would have a fully recharged battery in most cases. So that if the range on that was, say, 120 to 200 miles, you would have basically a full tank of fuel to take you where you needed to go. Then if you took it a step further and you had a charging facility close by, you could recharge for a nominal amount. It's about 2 cents a mile to drive an electric vehicle now versus 14 to 18 cents a mile for automobiles that are using a fossil fuel element, whether it happens to be gasoline or diesel. Makes no difference. So the point is that do we have option? The answer is yes. And, I've kind of gotten off the subject today, which is the greatest hoax in about history. But, and due to the time element, then we're going to have to push that off till tomorrow, because I don't want to make a mistake and try to go off my memory, because that really doesn't authenticate the story. So tomorrow, when we have more time, and I apologize because, again, the transportation issue, as far as it's not only having to travel long distances, that we need to worry about, but the short distances are becoming more and more important. And people can get stuck in that. They could run out of gas or diesel anywhere along the way. They could cause traffic interruptions almost anywhere. And you need to look at the traffic today and say, well, if it's this bad now, bumper-to-bumper traffic, especially in the afternoon, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, and depending, of course, the direction that you're going, but it becomes horrendous. And it is not unusual to get caught up in a situation where you're going to be tied up for hours. Where when you're doing that, you're running an engine, you're running out of fuel, maybe you're hungry, maybe you're thirsty or whatever. And whatever those situations are, they're there, and you, in a lot of cases, just can't get out of them. Because if you leave the car, now you're causing additional problems. If you start to walk, you don't have any idea how far you have to walk to get out. Then you've got your car stuck back on the freeway, and in all probability is going to get towed by the time you get back, if you get back at all. So, as you can see, transportation today is not as simple as one might expect. That's right, not as simple as one might expect. So what do we do about it? Well, we just let nature take its course. Well, nature has already taken its course. The problem with that is that's exactly what has happened. Nature has taken its course by the reproduction of more life. Is there a time when we can run out of resources to take care of those? I mean, there's 9 billion people on the planet, or at least so I'm told, 9 billion people. What other species is that large? Well, they're far and few between. And as we continue to use up our natural resources, we will run out of them. And it really doesn't make any difference what the fuel is, whether it happens to be coal, or it could be shale oil, oil in particular. Well, that's not going to be for 100 or 200 years later. Well, that's interesting because I've experienced almost 80 years in my life, and it seems to have flown by pretty quickly. And I've seen Las Vegas go from a population of 20,000 to 2 million. Now, it didn't take that long. It grew by leaps and bounds, and it is limited. It's limited by the resources we have available to sustain the additional growth that a population increase is going to produce. Again, you don't believe me? Look on the freeway and just see what the infrastructure is doing. It's suffering. The infrastructure is suffering because we do not have enough roads to be able to handle existing traffic today. You say, well, they're building roads. Well, they're building roads in different places. But if you've noticed, you probably have seen some of the places where those roads need to be improved, where they're nothing more than a washboard effect and causing you ill effects on your vehicle that are going to have to be handled, and the price of mechanics is not going down, it's going up. So why don't we think about ways that we can simplify our life? And one of the reasons that the electric vehicle is not here today is because, and back in the 90s, and I'm going to say around 98, somewhere there, 99, maybe even as late as 2000, the electric vehicles that were on the street that were manufactured by Toyota, Chevy, and Ford, all electric vehicles, almost all of them were destroyed, crushed. Why? Simple. Money. Money was the reason that happened. Nothing else. You can say, well, we didn't have the range, we didn't have that. Yes, okay, that was a contributing factor, but no, it wasn't the real reason that they stopped the production and decided to eliminate the vehicles that they had created. The real reason was that when you have an electric vehicle, you really don't need a radiator transmission and everything from spark plugs to oil filters and belts, and just all those things go away. You don't need transmission fluid because most of them are single drive, and they're quite powerful. The electric vehicle, the ones that I have owned, 85 miles an hour, which in today's traffic is more than adequate to handle the needs of most people. Can they go quicker? Of course they can. We have set world speed records with motorcycles and cars that have been all electric. But in both cases, you're talking about a limited application. That is to say, for drags and so forth, or a couple miles around the track. That's easy for them, but long distance is not currently available. Will it change? Yes, of course it will. And so, in talking about the transportation issue, we have so much to look forward to when we can understand that it's a necessity. Just like North Korea is currently a problem, we have to change that from a liability to an asset if we can, or we won't have to worry about the roads. We won't have to worry about fuel, because they, or someone like them, can develop the technology they need, not only for nuclear, but for solar blast, artificial solar blast, that do the same thing, and that is knock out the entire electrical system of a particular country or county, whichever the enemy is looking to destroy. Well, why would the enemy even think about doing that? Do we have enemies so great that we can't compromise to make them fall in line? I don't know. It's very hard to believe. But the reason people go to war is because someone has done something to them that they don't like, or imposed embargoes or other things on them, and they have to fight their way out of the bag. Fight their way out of the bag, yes. We've handicapped them, we've surrounded them, we're not letting food and materials and so forth in for them so that they can live, so that they can enjoy health and prosperity. So given that, it's almost like being in an arena with a lion and backing that arena into the corner. That lion will come out because he's got no place to go. He's backed into a corner. And so rather than suffer the consequences of being attacked from whoever has put them there, he will come out and fight for his life, because that's what you're doing, fighting for the life. So when we talk about North Korea, and if we have imposed those kinds of sanctions on them, and they are trying to fight their way out of a wet bag, then you know the reason why. How do we stop that? Frankly, I'm not sure. Have we pushed this thing so far that it's beyond reconciliation? I don't know. Does that happen? Of course it happens all the time. It happens primarily in marriages. We can relate to that simply by saying, well, it's not reconcilable. And I don't know if North Korea is non-reconcilable or not. But we do know that we can't continue on this same path, and yes, it is the greatest threat to America today and the rest of the world, because we're not alone and we're not the only enemies, but we're one of the major ones. And if you're going to retaliate, you go against the person that's hurting you the most. I don't know. Is South Korea a bigger threat than the United States? Could be. It could be because they are neighbors and they're equal to yet diametrically opposed in purpose, that they think that South Korea would be the proper place for them to implement a nuclear bomb, South Korea. On the other hand, they may decide that, well, that's not the biggest threat we have. Well, our biggest threat is America. And if that's the case, they're going to come after us. If they use EMP, electrical magnetic pulses, yes, there's more to the electric vehicle than stands out, you see, because electrical magnetic pulses can destroy an electrical system. It can wipe out a country in a heartbeat, where over a course of a year, 80 to 90% of the population could be decimated, dead, of a particular company. And they may not have restored their power even by that time. So we need to be careful in dealing with people. We need to be conscientious of our own needs. And we need to think about ways that we can alter that. And if you have answers to that, by all means, you need to talk to us. We're at 702-743-8297. I'm Blu Laker. This is Cobra USA, the show. And we do emanate from the Radio Tribune here in Las Vegas. And by the way, we also have a weekly newspaper. It's an internet newspaper, but it's pretty interesting, frankly. It's got a lot of information that you won't typically hear on your regular media. It goes way beyond that. We're not always talking about Russian interference. We're not always talking about Hillary Clinton or any of the rest of those issues that we currently are involved with now. What we talk about is progress. That's what we do, and that's what we're looking for. I say knock off the nonsense. It's time for us to come together as a nation. That is, we need to have cooperation with the administration so that we can move forward, make progress. That's what we need to do. So here again, I had to get off the subject today, and it's too bad that I did, because it's an interesting subject. But until tomorrow, have a great day.